Hello well-wishers and welcome to my channel Aspiring Minds. In today's video, we are going to discuss the line-by-line meaning of the poem I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings by Maya Angelou. So let's get started. Now before we begin our reading of the poem, let us learn a little bit about who is Maya Angelou. She was a very famous poet born on April 4th, 1928, and she died just a few years back on May 28th, 2014. Her real name was Margaret Annie Johnson, and it is her own brother who later named her Maya. Therefore, she got the name of Maya Angelou. And the poem that we will be reading is based on the same title of her own autobiography that she had written, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings. And both in her autobiography as well as in the poem, we'll see how there is a common theme that comes out. The central theme of the poem is the contrast between a free bird and a caged bird. Now, what do I mean by that? There is actually a hidden meaning behind it. The free bird in the poem represents the white Americans. They are being discriminated on the basis of their color. And the other is a caged bird who here represent the Afro-Americans. Now, the condition of the African American people in those times was not good. They were discriminated on the basis of their skin color. They were treated as slaves. They had to do difficult, heavy tasks, and they did not get voting rights or the privilege, the benefits that a white American easily got. So the African Americans really had to work very hard to make a place in society, and that is what the poet highlights in this poem. From the very first stanza itself, we see how the contrast between a free bird and a caged bird begins, because in stanza 1, the poet says that the free bird leaps, it keeps on flying freely in the air. As high as it wants and as low as it wants, it keeps flying upwards and downwards freely. Occasionally you see the wings of the bird dipping into orange rays of the sun, as if the free bird is the owner of the sky. That is how freely he roams about. He flies about in the sky without any fear of danger whatsoever. And this is in sharp contrast to the condition of the African American people. The white people could live freely as and when they wanted, but the African Americans constantly had to think about taking any step that they had to take in life. In stanza 2, the poet now tells us about the condition of a caged bird. He is constantly tied up, confined, or restricted within the bars of cage, and his vision is also very limited. The confinement in this case is so powerful that this second bird is not only caged in a physical sense but also psychologically, that is mentally. So the metaphor bars of rage shows that the cage within which the bird is confined is both physical and psychological. This also shows how generation after generation racial discrimination had restricted the vision of the African American people, and it is only very recently that they realized it and they started to hold protests to stop this enslavement that they were bound to. However, this external restriction that is imposed on the bird also restricts his spirit, his liveliness, his energy, and this is in sharp contrast to the opportunities and possibilities that were available to the free bird. The caged bird sings in a fearful, trembling voice. The caged bird fears the oppression because of the result of singing. If he sings or if he raises his voice, again he would be enslaved. However, despite the fact that the bird has never tasted of freedom, yet he realizes that freedom is that basic necessity for existence, which is why the tune of freedom is sung by the bird and it spreads far and wide. That is, the bird is like a spokesperson through his tune, trying to speak up for all the African American people who belong to the race. And although the caged bird is restricted, however, he is still hopeful and he inspires others too to long for freedom. In stanza 4, we go back to that unrestricted free movement of the free bird. He thinks of another breeze. So by this, the poet wants to say that the free bird, because of being free, is able to think of what? Of things like the breeze, the trade winds, the sighing trees, the fat worms that the bird will be able to eat on a bright sunny day, and he can claim the sky to be his own. The sighing trees over here may be suggestive that the nature only worries about black people suffering. It gives an indication to the lack of freedom, as the trees are also tied to the ground like the caged bird. So the poem also makes an allusion to the slave trade. It mentions about the trade winds, which refers to the slave trade, because the trade routes of these slaves were significantly influenced by the trade winds which blew from east to west, from Africa towards the Caribbean. So the reference to the free bird thinking of the trade winds is a part of what makes it clear that the free bird symbolizes white America, which sees its freedom as justifying at the cost of exploiting the African Americans. In stanza 5, we again go back to the condition of the caged bird, because the cage has now become a kind of a grave for the bird's dreams. He knows that his dreams are restricted. There is no possibility of being able to think about things which he has been wishing for. So there is a damage which has been done to the mental processes, to the thinking of the caged bird, and he has a nightmarish scream. He is frustrated because of the confinement all throughout his life, because he constantly keeps getting this reminder that he's not free, he is a prisoner, he's a captive. He knows his dreams of flying in a free air are but a dream. It can never be fulfilled, and that is why we will see that the African Americans had a long struggle to actually come out of the confines of slavery and that racial discrimination that they were subjected to. It took them generation after generation had to suffer in order for the African Americans to be free today. Finally, when we come to stanza 6, we see that this is once again a repetition of what has already been said in stanza 3. This repetition justifies the condition of the bird as well as his determination to keep going after his dream of freedom. This might be seen as the poet's message to raise our voice, to express ourselves, so that they are no longer suppressed or considered weak. The poet also wants to emphasize that one should never give up, no matter what kind of a situation we are in. So this reiteration or repetition of the song of the caged bird is a surety that the song will reach people, and the bird's dream to be free will definitely be fulfilled. So the caged bird is like an extended metaphor for the black community in America and around the world. The caged bird highlights the struggle of the African Americans for equality during the civil rights movement. Now, what are some of the important themes that come out from our reading of the poem? The first is oppression and freedom, or oppression versus freedom. This is the central theme of the poem, and through the image of the free bird and the caged bird, the poet presents us this stark contrast. Next is resilience and expression. Despite the confinement, the caged bird is able to sing, and through its song it tries to express itself about its wish, its desire for freedom. The poem also highlights the injustice that had to be faced by the African American people. The caged bird's struggle for freedom and its desire for a better life serves as a commentary on the condition of the African Americans. What is the important metaphor and symbolism in this poem? Maya Angelou uses vivid metaphors and symbolism to convey the deep emotional and societal truths. She is trying to use the image of the bird to convey her message to us. And we cannot but forget about hope and aspiration, that is a desire to be free. Despite the harsh reality of confinement, of being caged, the bird never gives up. It never loses hope. So it represents the enduring human desire for better life and a belief, a strong affirmation that yes, if you raise your voice, things will change. And we know it in today's world how the African American people, despite generations of peaceful and other forms of protest, gained the freedom that they had long desired. So that's it from this video. I hope you liked it. Do hit the like button. Subscribe to my channel for more such future updates. Thank you for watching. Bye.